props, and other kitty stuff. He went on about how we clean the cabins. We have to make sure we put every bag and piece of furniture back in place. We also had to keep an eye out for wild animals, as they could be dangerous to the campers. So we're janitors, maintenance staff, and security guards? Julio asked, jokingly. Basically, Graham said before bellowing a laugh. He showed us several of the activity areas during our drive. There was an archery station, a swimming pool, the lake with a large rope swing, a playground, an open field, a basketball court, a sand volleyball court, hockey, and a foosball table. There was also a small building that Graham said was a chapel, but he said it was never used and we wouldn't need to worry about it. I'm still surprised Amy was able to get this all situated in just 2 years. Graham said quietly. What do you mean? I asked. We had to move camps 3 years ago because the city bought us out, Graham said, and no one had to explain now since I had heard him. Eminent domain. Why did they buy it out? Julio asked. Don't know. I thought his response was odd, but I didn't ask anything afterwards. After driving around some more, Graham took us to the main lodge. The counselors were already there, and the cooks were in the kitchen cooking dinner. Graham told us to mingle with the new counselors so we could at least know who we'd be working with for the next 7 weeks. Julio and I split off to meet the others individually. Most of the counselors were teenagers.
Yeah, so every time I try and play music, it like gets copyrighted even though it's supposed to be.
However,
I don't know. Anyways, here's this Mr. Creeps, the channel. Go check it out. Really recommend it. Bunch of scary stories. I gotta play this because I don't know what else to play because every time I do. I'll be right back.
Some of them would even walk up to me and just stare, not saying a thing. After being made thoroughly uncomfortable, I went into the bathroom and hid until it was time to eat dinner. I sat in the far back corner of the room, away from everyone else. However, even as I ate, I still felt eyes on me. After we ate our food, Amy got in front of the room and began to speak. It was actually then that I finally saw her in person. She was a middle-aged woman, maybe my parents' age, with gray streaked black hair wrapped in a ponytail and a face that matched her age. She told us that she was glad we had decided to work or return to work for the camp, and that she was excited for another great summer. After speaking for a few more minutes, we were dismissed for the night. I ended up staying back to talk to Amy about the counselors acting weird around me. Well, you and Julio are the only new employees this summer, Amy said. We usually don't get that many new employees, so they are probably just surprised to see someone new. But whenever I said my name, that's when they began to act weird, I said. She just looked at me, not saying a word. What? I asked. Nothing. Look, just don't worry about it. If you're still uncomfortable, go back to your apartment. And with that, she walked away. I was so confused and actually a little concerned, but I decided to give her the benefit of the doubt. Maybe she was right. The counselors might be just really weird people. I walked back by myself to my apartment, but as I was passing the chapel, something caught my eye. I walked up the stoop and looked through the window on the door. Inside, there is a small light flickering at the far end of the room. I could see the outline of someone kneeling on the ground, their back facing me. I knelt down and I put my ear up to the door to listen, and I began to hear whispering. Dear Savior, I've discovered it and I will do it. This is what you've wanted. I'm so excited to meet you. I then began to hear crying, but not of pain or despair. Rather, it was crying of joy. And then he began whispering again. We won't let you down. I won't let you down. We'll all be at peace soon. Creeped out, I decided it was time to go. But when I got up and looked inside again, I nearly pissed myself. The figure was now right against the door, looking out the window, staring at me with an angry look on his face. I recognized it to be Carson. I bolted back to the apartment and was thankfully not followed by Carson. Once inside, I slammed the door behind me, scaring Julio half to death. "You good?" he asked. "Yeah, some dude just scared me on the way back. Just popped out at me from the bushes." I lied. "Probably one of those counselors, huh?" He snickered. "That's not funny," I said. "Wait, how did you find out?" "I could see how uncomfortable you were. Plus, I couldn't help but notice that they were constantly staring at you." I didn't respond and just went to our shared bedroom to go to sleep, only to wake up at an unknown time. I heard voices coming from outside of my window. I peeked through the blinds to see Amy talking with Graham and Carson. "I'm telling you, it's him," Amy said. "And I discovered how to finally perform it," Carson said. "It's almost time." "Look, whether it's him or not, I don't care," Graham said. "He's still my employee, and for all you know, he could be an innocent guy. The last thing we need is another innocent person being attacked by one of your employees." "I'll make sure once again it's him," Amy said. "I haven't figured out how to do it yet, but I'll figure something out. I still question why I let you work here if you don't agree with our beliefs." "You told me your reason when I was hired," Graham said. "Besides, you wouldn't be able to let go of me without me being a threat to your safety." They kept talking, but I stopped listening. Horrified, I quickly sauntered back to my bed and curled up in a ball under the blankets. Julio, thankfully, didn't wake up from me moving around. Somehow, I managed to fall back asleep and I woke up the next morning. At breakfast, I was eating my food when I noticed that 10 of the counselors at another table were again taking glances at me. Every few seconds, one of them would look my way. At this point, I had enough and I walked over and I confronted them. "What do you want?" I asked. None of them responded to me. "Really?" I asked angrily. "You stare at me and when confronted, you have nothing to say." Before they even got to say anything, I felt someone grab my shoulder. I turned to see Amy, looking at me with a stern look on her face. "What's going on here?" she asked me. "These guys have been staring at me for the last 10 minutes, I said annoyingly. I asked them what the problem was, but they refused to answer me. She sighed before speaking again. "I'll deal with them. Sit back down and eat. I don't need any more shit starting because of you, Harrison." "How is this my fault?" I asked her, only to get no response as she walked away. I had had enough and decided to throw my food away and walk back towards my apartment. During my walk, I passed by the chapel again, and given that it was now daytime, I decided to get a better look at the place. As I looked around the room, I saw a large painting of a man. The man was pretty tall, his body stocky and built. He appeared to be in his 30s, if not a little younger. He was shirtless, and in his left hand was a red book. Below the painting was a word in blue letters. I assumed it was a name, but I had never heard of this name before. It said, Chirino. I was so intrigued by the painting that I didn't even notice someone had walked up to me. "What are you doing?" someone asked. I slowly turned to see Graham standing there. Just looking in there," I said nervously. "Okay. Again, there's no point in going in there. Besides, I don't get their obsession with this guy." "What are you talking about?" "The people here dedicated this entire place to the guy who the camp is named after. He's remembered as a hero." "What did he do?" "A war hero." "That's it?" Yep. And now come on. I want to show you the shed with all the lawn equipment in it. We walked off, me still feeling very weirded out by everything here. Camp hasn't even started yet, but I already regret coming here. What have I gotten myself into? A few days later, Camp Oakwood's first session officially began. Around 100 campers aged 5 to 10 were dropped off by their families for their week-long stay. Julio and I watched from outside our apartment as the massive children were greeted by a cheerful Amy and all of the counselors. "So glad I'm not a counselor," I said. "You and me both," Julio responded. After the staff finished their cringy introduction, the campers were all brought to their respective cabins to, I assume, unpack their belongings. Graham told us that on the first night of each session, there would be a big bonfire that was supposed to symbolize the beginning of the campers' time at Camp Oakwood. Graham put Julio and Carson in charge of setting it up, while Graham and I were to clean it up once the whole thing was done. A 50-50 split of work, as Graham liked to call it. At that moment, I was feeling mixed emotions. On one hand, I was still creeped out by the counselors and other staff, and I didn't know how bad the kids would be. On the other, however, I was ready to start most of my work so that I could hopefully get my mind off of everyone's behavior around me. Thankfully, I didn't have to wait too long for that. While Julio and I continued chatting, Graham called us over the radio, telling us to hurry over to one of the cabins. Apparently, a camper had already vomited all over his cabin's floor, and some of the camper's bags as well, and we needed to clean it up. Graham and Carson were already busy setting up bullseye targets at the archery station, which meant that we, the rookies, would have to get our hands dirty. We grabbed the necessary supplies from the small maintenance shed that was located next to our housing wing, and hurried over to Cabin 5. We arrived to see about 20 campers and 2 counselors outside the cabin holding their noses with their shirts from the smell. One camper stood away from everyone else. You could see stains on the kid's shirt from a mile away. You could also smell it from another city away. One of the counselors, who I had not yet met at that point, came running up to us. He was young as well, maybe my age, with really light blonde hair and a faded style haircut. "I've already called the nurses," he said. "They're on their way." "Okay," Julio said. "Get the others away from the building. The last thing we need is someone else to get sick." "You're right," the counselor said before turning to the campers and the other counselor. "All right, guys, we're heading to the main lodge. Paxton, stay here. The nurses will be here soon. Everyone else, let's go." And with that, they briskly made their escape, leaving Paxton alone with us. We told him to stay outside while we walked towards the cabin. We had all of our cleaning supplies ready, but we had to fight the smell and the urge to vomit at the same time. We finally got up enough courage to go inside. After several long minutes, we managed to get rid of the vomit itself. The smell lingered, but not as strong as before. Just as we were walking out, I noticed a poster hanging on the wall above the bed, directly next to the door. It was a replica of the painting hanging in the chapel. "Hey, look at this," I told Julio while pointing at it. "It's just a picture of Horace Oakwood, the guy who founded the camp many years ago," he said. "That's what Graham told me. Some war hero," I said. "Yeah," Julio responded. "He defeated a powerful tribe back in the 1800s. They were heavily outnumbered and on the brink of defeat. But Horace mounted a tremendous comeback and managed to defeat the tribe. He was even stabbed in the back but survived, and rocked a pretty neat scar for the rest of his life." "So he was a badass?" I asked sarcastically. "Yep," Julio said before we both laughed. "Was he called Chirino?" I asked. "Yeah, that was the nickname Horace made for himself. Horace claimed a warrior needs a unique nickname that separates him from the rest." "But why Chirino?" Honestly, no one really knows. He never explained how he came up with it and what it was based off of. Interesting, I responded, before grabbing my walkie-talkie to radio Graham. Okay. Hey Graham, we finished cleaning up the vomit.
I think everything's ready. Sorry about the long wait.
5 seconds later, Graham came over the walkie.
I didn't mean for it
Okay, Carson and I finished setting
wait,
up.
But
we now need to go set up the rec center.
I tried to make myself some coffee. Couldn't make coffee
Julio
because
and I put the stuff back up and walked to the rec center.
Ran out of sugars.
As I previously mentioned, the rec center
I gotta try and hype myself up.
Games such as ping pong, foosball, and air hockey.
So yeah.
There were also smaller games
this is a good start, though.
and chess, but they were set up on benches and tables. It was mainly used by the more quiet campers during the free time of the day, which was during the 2-hour interval for lunch. Well, it was supposed to have all this stuff. The problem was, nothing had been set up yet. When Graham drove us by the rec center the previous week, the doors were closed and the windows were tinted, so I couldn't even tell if there was stuff already inside. Graham told us what was in there, but he never told us that it wasn't set up yet. Graham explained that we needed to set it all up so the campers could begin using the stuff the next day. There is a small locked shed behind the rec center where all this stuff was kept. It took a while, but we managed to bring everything in and set it all up accordingly. While setting up, I kept noticing Carson taking glances at me. At one point,
you can't see the game.
For a solid minute. I was already fed up by the counselors doing this, so I already knew that I wasn't going to deal with this BS. However,
I am so
given what happened in the
sorry.
chapel
I
the
am
week
such
before,
a bad streamer, bro.
I didn't want to confront Carson on my own. So I stopped what I was doing. I decided to tell Graham, who I found back in the shed, pouring out a box full of board games from one of the shelves. Hey Graham, I said. Carson will not stop staring at me.
Killjoy and Bullet Boost.
I don't know what his problem is, but please go tell him to stop. Well, why don't you tell him you have a problem with it? He asked me. I really wanted to explain what I had seen the previous week in the chapel, but I bit my tongue and just told him that I was very creeped out by him. He could probably tell that I was holding something back, but he accepted my excuse and told me that he would handle it. He gave me the box of board games and left the shed. As I walked out, I could see Graham and Carson talking, but couldn't hear them because they were talking quietly. In the end, Carson nodded and Graham walked back to the shed. True to Graham's word, Carson didn't stare at me again after that. Well, at least I hope he didn't. After we finished, we hopped back in the cart and drove back to our housing building. Graham dropped the three of us off and told us to keep our walkies on in case something popped up. He then drove off towards the main lodge building. Julio and I went back inside our apartment and decided to chill for the rest of the day. We had already eaten lunch earlier in the day before the campers had arrived, so we wouldn't have anything else to do until the bonfire later that night. While I was on the couch watching some TV on our really old TV, Julio piped up from the small kitchen. I wonder what made Amy hire a guy like Carson, he said. Beats me, I responded. Amy probably just hires anyone who's interested in working for this camp. He's a very weird guy. I know, he said. You know, I've noticed you're always very uncomfortable around Carson. Well, why's that? What do you mean? I asked him. I saw you complain to Graham earlier today about Carson constantly staring at you. I noticed as well, and was just waiting for you to do something about it.
That scared me.
But even before that, you were already uncomfortable, and honestly, you looked a little scared every time we were around Carson. I don't know what you're talking about. Come on, man. It's obvious you're creeped out by him. You can tell me the reason why.
What's up? Nothing.
Up to that point, I hadn't told
Stream really just started, honestly.
Both the chapel and outside of our window.
Every time I try and do like music, it gets copyright claimed for some reason.
Julio could tell something was up. So I
play copyright-free music, so
spill the beans. And after a quick deliberation,
I don't know.
I chose the latter. I needed help and keeping it on my chest.
So I'm just gonna play.
and so I ended up telling him everything.
By the way, when I'm quiet, you guys have something
Amy, Graham,
very
and
loud.
Carson talking outside of her window in the middle of the night. Julio just stared at me, taking in what I was saying. When I was finally done, all he said was, "Wow. I'm very creeped out right now, dude."
I can tell. I hope that fixed it. Oh, no, by the door. By the door. It's time to go. That might have fixed it. I'm not too sure though. I've been having issues with my internet lately.